G'day and welcome to Dave's Model Workshop. Today I'm going to talk to you about airbrushes and basically what sort of rig you need to start with, and if you're looking to upgrade to something that's a little bit more intermediate, what sort of stuff you can look out for there. So, what do I use? For many years, this is what I've used. It is a cheapo, lots of birds outside, it's a cheapo Sparmax DH103, hoping you can read that there, and basically I got this plus the compressor for about $100 Australian on eBay, and this is, I promise you, about 10 years ago, and it's gone strong forever. It's never given me a single problem. So some people say, oh, I really have issues with my airbrushes and I have to replace seals and blah 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 blah. No, this has been a cheapo rig for many years. It's been abused. Look at how much gunk is still in the nozzle there. It's been abused, it's been used hard, and it's still going strong. But it definitely has its limitations. So let's start off with, what do you need if you want to buy an opening level airbrush? You'll need a compressor. This one's been great. I don't know, CE, I don't even know. It's a generic brand. It was totally no-name stuff that I bought. And you want something that's got a moisture trap, because otherwise it will sputter out water on warmish days when you're airbrushing. And you need something that has a pressure gauge, because when you adjust this down the bottom, you can adjust how strong the pressure is. I'll turn it on. It'll be noisy. Hopefully I can continue doing my voiceover. So you can loosen that and get it down to about, what's that on? About 20 psi at the moment, or you can tighten it up and it gets up to about 60 psi before it cuts out. Oh no, it's going higher. Whoa, it's giving it too much, Captain. She cannot take much more. And this is great if you want to just blast out really strong pressure. It's great. Let's turn that off. Let the air out. So yeah, you definitely want something that's got the moisture trap and something that's adjustable for your PSI, because you don't want to always be spraying bang full pressure. Full pressure is great for, I want to cover a lot of area really quickly. Low pressure is great for, I want to do something that's a bit more subtle. And by subtle, I mean something like, I'll show you on my recent Wingnut Wings build. I'll show you the wings here. This is my Wingnut Wings Fokker E4, and all of this was painted using my old airbrush. So you can see that gradation on the wings, and particularly along the front of each of the wings, there are these two little tiny sort of dense indentations between the spars. Each of those was subtly better on this wing, closer to your left of screen, better on that one than on the right, but subtly or not so subtly done with that airbrush. If I tip it over, hopefully you can also see just the subtle shading that I put around those spars again. See if I can get a bit more distance and it might be a bit more obvious. Yeah, you can see that subtle shading. So that was done using a crappy airbrush that really doesn't paint fine painting, doesn't do fine little lines, but if you dial down your PSI and you do it in sort of 4 or 5 applications, 4 or 5 coats, then you really have a lot of subtlety and a lot of precision, and you can get tiny things. So there are workarounds. There are definitely workarounds if you don't have a fine nozzle and a fine needle and airbrush that's performing at peak performance. Yeah, thought you'd be interested. So again, the trick is dial down your PSI and do lots of really fine, thin coats, and that'll get you there. So yeah, you can see the depth of variety it gives you. I massively recommend a double action airbrush, so you push down and pull back to push down to get the airflow, pull back to pull back the nozzle, and that gets the paint coming out. You definitely want a gravity feed. You don't want any of these ones that have the bell jar underneath. they're just too hard, and you have to have great big pressure before any paint will come out. They're only good for covering basically car panels. Anything more detailed, you don't want one of those. You want a gravity-fed airbrush. And double action just means, like, there are some out there, you just press the button and bang, it's coming out. You want that down and then pull back for the air to come out. I'll show you in a second. It just gives you a hell of a lot more control. I mean, this is all basic. This is, like I said, this is total entry-level stuff. You also want one that you can adjust how fine the nozzle is, so how far the nozzle comes out the end there. Does that even make sense? Basically, you can tighten this down and you get a very fine little line. You can loosen it up and you get a great big spread. I'm going to stop talking and show you what this one does. So, like I said, this is a cheapo and it served me well for 10 years. I'll show you what it does. Right, so the paint I'm using here in my standard airbrush is Tamiya Enamel Flat Black. Nothing special, but it will show up very nicely on the paper. So, this is kind of my default setting. And it's great for covering areas, and it's very forgiving. Spraying at about 40 to 50 psi, but hardly pushing back the nozzle at all, so you can see. So I'm only going back the furthest amount, it can come all the way back to there. Only going down the furthest amount. And that's great for pretty much anything you want to paint. If I want to make that finer, adjust it down, see how we go this time. So it's finer, but it's still not very fine, because this is an old airbrush and it's a cheap airbrush. So I, really struggle to do very fine paint. That's about as good as I can get with this, and that's what I would have done for the Wingnut Wings plane that I showed you a second ago. Can I get finer? That's as far as it goes. Let's see if it even works. That's as far as it will let me take the nozzle back. Sorry, the trigger. That's as far back as it will let me take the trigger. So that's as fine as it gets. It's not amazing. But if you're smart and you muck about with your PSI, or you're really, really gentle with your trigger, you can get some fine effects. But they're just not terribly delicate. You get the idea. Is this art? No, it's not. I'll show you what it's like to paint on my hardy test mule. Over here, I have my long-suffering King Tiger. Let's go. Oop, I'm going to just open that up a bit. And it's great. I mean, you never want to paint something in just one go anyway. You would never want to splodge it on so that it's totally done in one spray. You need to do a number of coats. I'm out of paint. Okay, fill up some. We have paint again. So yeah, like I was saying, you'd never want to try and spray paint something just in one coat anyway. It would be insane. You want to do a number of thin coats. So like I said, this has been my everyday airbrush for 10 years. Everything I've produced, I've used this on. And it's great, and it's workable. You can use a cheapo rig and it will be fine. It's versatile, you can get into small spaces, it's really good. I will never ever say you can't get by with a cheap airbrush. You can get by with a cheap airbrush. Turn off the air compressor. So this baby has cost me about $10 a year. $100 over 10 years. You can't beat that. It's been great. But I would hate to try and do freehand camouflage of, say, a 1/72nd Italian aircraft. No way. Anything small scale, I think I'd struggle. If that's as fine a line as I can get there, it's not ideal. So, I recently thought to myself, you know what? It's time to get a more intermediate airbrush. I still firmly believe save money where you can modelling. Really, you don't want to spend hundreds and hundreds of bucks on the latest and greatest and fanciest one. Seriously, maybe if you're producing fine art, or you're spray painting the sides of panel vans, that might be worthwhile. But for modelers, look, it's up to you. It's your money. I've never seen the need to get one of the really high-end ones. Your Badges or your Parsh, P-A-A-S-C-H-E, all those really expensive ones. No, I've never felt the need for one. That said, I don't model very tiny scales. So, what is my intermediate airbrush that I've opted for, and what sort of things was I looking for? I'm glad you asked. So this is my new intermediate airbrush. So it's not the top of the line, but it looks good. I got this from spraygunner.com. If you haven't spoken to them, they offer a 10% discount to supporters of Dave's Model Workshop. I'll put a link here and you can see the details. But yeah, 10% off at spraygunner.com and 10% off airbrushes and airbrush supplies. Can't go wrong. So it is a Mr. Hobby Procon Boy FWA double action. It's 0.2mm, which I believe my old one was as well. It's been so long since I bought it, I actually can't remember, but I'm pretty sure it was 0.2mm needle as well. So let's open it up and check it out. So this is the case inside, and it looks nice. You know, it's very fancy, but I'm not here for that. The instructions, there's one set that's entirely in Japanese. You kind of get the gist of it, but it's not that helpful if you don't speak Japanese. But they do also have a second set which has both Japanese and English instructions. I guess the main things to note on this one, things that are different, are it has this little air adjust screw, which my old one didn't. It has this crown nozzle, crown cap, and basically it's meant to not be taken apart, so that the instructions actually say do not take the needle out when you are cleaning this. Do not pull out the needle, do not remove the nozzle. So the way that this is meant to be cleaned is the sort of the washback system, the blowback system, where you fill the cup, you put your finger on the end, and you start spray painting and start painting. Oh my goodness! Start spray painting when you've got some thinners in there, and it actually bubbles up into the cup and cleans out the nozzle. So I'm going to take it all out and get stuck in. So here we go with the Mr. Hobby, and it's definitely a lot finer already. You can see if I want thick coverage is very easy. But if I want fine coverage, it's a lot easier. There's just a lot more responsiveness to the trigger. I guess I should show you the actual airbrush while I'm filming. And then if I narrow it down, make the line finer, too fine, a little bit less. Finer still. You can see it does have a much finer line possible. So you would be able to airbrush freehand that 1/72 camouflage if you needed to. Let's see what it's like on the tank. Look at my prop, beautiful. On the paint mule, we'll make it wide again. It's definitely got better flow. Comes out a bit thicker, a bit faster, but if I'm gentle, not as thick, not as fast. So for this, it's much of a muchness. And look, really, the main difference is that fineness that you can achieve. So if I wanted to get fine on here and do something crazy, it's doable. Too fine again. If I wanted to freehand some camouflage, it's definitely possible now. And that would have really struggled with the old, cheaper airbrush. I guess also, 10 years of wear and tear as well wouldn't help. But this is a great brush. I haven't really played around much with this yet, so this air adjust thingy, I think it's a way of adjusting how much air goes in at any time. So that's stopped all the air entirely. So that's almost like having your own little pressure valve adjusting the PSI on the airbrush itself. So look, there, you can see how much finer it is. I'll do that on the paper. So that is a really cool thing. That's a beautiful feature. So if I've got it open quite wide, the paint flow is a lot less. If I close it down, more paint comes out. So that's like adjusting the PSI, but it's on the airbrush. That's a beautiful feature. So the big question is, which would I recommend? And I don't think it's going to be any kind of surprise to you. This is the better one. Definitely, it feels more quality. That's the Mr. Hobby, by the way. So it feels better quality, and this little adjuster here is fantabulous. It's like adjusting the PSI of your compressor as you go. How convenient is that? It definitely gives a much finer result if you're after fine lines, and it works better. But if you're just starting out, get a cheapie. Honestly, there's nothing bad with that. They're great. It'll introduce you to how good airbrushing is. You will never go back. Once you've airbrushed, you will never go back to just using a paintbrush only. Never, ever, ever. I promise you. So if you can scrape together $100 and get that and an air compressor, happy days. And if you're in the US, it'll be less. If you're in the mood to upgrade, then I think something like this, the Mr. Hobby, is great. And if you can get it at 10% off, even better. Again, check out spraygunner.com. But otherwise, I think you can do a lot with a cheap one. You can get by for a long, long time with a cheap one. But when you're ready to up your game, I think those little tiny details, things like that for convenience, and just that precision, that extra precision, really does make a world of difference. I hope this helps. Look, it's not an exhaustive survey of millions of types of airbrushes. I don't have the money for that, quite frankly. I would love to say, I'll trial out 10 different airbrushes. I don't have that kind of cash. But for this one, I would heartily recommend it. Well, look at that, they're both balanced. Yay! I hope this has been helpful. If you've got any comments, please chime in below. I'd love to hear from you. But otherwise, this is Dave, signing off from Dave's Model Workshop. Until next time, see you guys.